Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel 1971 War Book series. Today we are going to talk to somebody from the Indian Armed Forces staff who was actually in the staff at Fort William in Eastern Command and planning the operations of the Indian Armed Forces and the Mukti Bahini, especially initially the operations, training and everything regarding the provisional government of Bangladesh during the 1971 war, alongside how the Indian Army is going to operate, including the planning of the operation as well. He was very much associated with Lieutenant General at that time, Major General J.F.R. Jacob, and he worked as Lieutenant Colonel GSO-1 Operations in Fort William, Eastern Command in the 1971 war. This is a man who can give us a very big detail of how the planning and the execution of the 1971 operations on the Eastern Front had happened. And also he had a very illustrious career in the Indian Armed Forces, being commissioned in the 3rd Sikh Light Infantry, alongside being the man who raised the 12th Corps, the Camel Corps of the Indian Army, a part of the Southern Command. And though he was a staff officer, before his promotion as Major General commanding the 25 Infantry Div in the Rajouri and Poonch sector, he had also commanded an infantry brigade in the counter-insurgency areas of Nagaland. Being a strategist with a heart, he actually stays in Kolkata and I was supposed to meet him. He had recovered from a fall and he had injured his limbs, but he had managed to recover and I was supposed to meet him in Calcutta, but due to the heavy rains that happened in this week and the week before, I couldn't make it to his residence. Yet he has been generous enough to talk over video call regarding his part in the 1971 war as a staff officer. So let's welcome Lieutenant General Ashok Chatterjee, Param Vishisht Seva Medal to our program today. So first of all, sir, I would like to have a brief introduction of yours before joining the armed forces, and how and why you got motivated to join the Indian Armed Forces, sir. And if you could give a brief about your commissioning as well.
Okay. Now, I was born in Ajmer, in Rajasthan, but my father had to go to England for his doctorate degree. This was before the war, Second World War. So that was supposed to be for a duration of 1 year. So my parents decided that we two brothers, we moved to Nagpur, where his younger brother, he was posted in Nagpur. So he kept us with his younger brother because he was just going for 9 months to complete his course in United Kingdoms. So we were in Nagpur. Unfortunately, while he was still in UK, the Second World War started. And he was held up there. Then he was employed by the British government to be a teacher in their college. Remained behind in Nagpur.
You remained behind in
with
Nagpur.
Our uncle. So best part of our life we spent in Nagpur, and I graduated from Morris College, which was the only government college in Nagpur those days. And after joining, since I was in the National Cadet Corps, the commandant of the National Cadet Corps recommended me and my family that I should join the Indian Army. So I was the first cadet from the National Cadet Corps to be commissioned into the Indian Army. And that was 1952, month of June.
A long time back.
Yeah, long time back. When I was commissioned, I joined the Sikh Light Infantry, which was a regiment which was raised way back, and sometimes in 1818.
1818.
Yes,
And this was which
and they
battalion,
took,
sir?
yeah,
This was.
and they took part in Tibet operations those days.
Mhm,
They opened the Tibet Road,
mhm,
which goes from present Sikkim.
mhm,
Then they also went to Shanghai in China.
mhm.
Then they have lot of battle honors, old battle honors in Europe, the First World War, Second World War, then Egypt, Middle East. Okay.
And this is
Now,
which battalion, sir, of the Sikh light?
I was commissioned in 3rd Battalion
Acha.
and I commanded 3rd Sikh 5th Sikh.
So your unit in 71, your parent unit was on the Western Front at that time.
Yeah, they were in the Western sector, not in the Eastern sector.
Right,
But
right.
just before the operation started,
Mhm.
I got posted as G1, GSO1, Grade Staff Officer Grade 1,
Mhm.
in charge of military operations at Headquarters Eastern Command at Kolkata.
Acha. Before coming to 71, sir, I would like to know a bit about uh, from your second lieutenant to becoming
Okay,
a major, that journey, sir.
right. Now, second lieutenant, the first operation we went in was in 62 Goa liberation.
Okay.
I was posted those days in 17 Div, which was in Ambala,
Mhm.
and we were the reserves, army reserves. So we were sent out with General Candid,
Okay.
who was commanding the Goa operations, overall operations. So that was my first major operations that we undertook.
Mhm.
After that, when I came back, I was posted to Jammu and Kashmir in Nowshera sector.
No, Shera. Acha.
And after Nowshera sector, we came back to Gaya.
Okay. Peacetime.
Now, Gaya was a reserve brigade
Mhm.
under 20 Div, which was located in
Barakpur.
Barakpur, 20 division in Barakpur, with a Gurkha battalion which used to be in Fort William.
Acha.
So that was the only formation which was in West Bengal those days.
20 mountain div.
20 Div headquarters was in Ranchi, but a brigade was located. Barakpur was the brigade headquarters with Tatagarh.
Tata.
Tatagarh is next to your Barakpur,
Mhm.
then Kakinada
Kakinada. Right, right.
and Kacharapada.
Kacharapara. Kacharapara
These
is the
three,
armor hub, I guess.
yeah, those days
Mhm.
these were the 3 battalion locations.
Okay.
So that was all that we had as far as uh, West Bengal was concerned. Because rest was all deployed against the Chinese in the northeast.
Okay.
Okay. Now this has very big significance as far as Bangladesh operation was concerned.
Mhm.
As you are aware, Bangladesh problem started sometimes in month of
March, I would say.
March or April, March. But we could not at that point of time withdraw our troops from the mountains, in the hills. Because if we did that, the Chinese would have provoked.
Mhm.
So that was a strategic decision taken at Calcutta Command Headquarters with General Manekshaw, and Indira Gandhi was in no uncertain terms told that Indian army will be defeated both against the Bangladesh as also in the northern borders if you start anything before October. Right. Now, having said that and having ensured that Chinese intervention is not possible, we decided that the D-Day for Bangladesh liberation would sometimes be in November, December.
Okay.
Now it had indirectly benefited Bangladesh to some extent. As you are aware, their government shifted to Kolkata.
Number 8 Theatre Road.
Right. Now in Theatre Road, and that was the time that we could motivate them to train their officers with our Mukti Bahini and our uh, army formations, so they could train together and lead them into Bangladesh.
Were you a
Because
part of planning in this training operation, sir?
yes, very much.
Acha.
Because I was in charge, as I told you, I was in charge of military operations.
Right, right.
And at that point of time, only a grade 1 officer was in charge of military operations. Now there is a major general in charge of operations. That's a separate issue altogether. But in 1970s, early 70s and 71, only GSO 1 used to be in charge of military operations. And you will be surprised that when the Bangladesh problem started, I requested my map section, military map section, to put up a map of Bangladesh in my office. So when that was coming up, my Chief of Staff, General Jacob, he walked into my office and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I am putting up the map of Bangladesh because there is lot of trouble and we may have to intervene."
Okay.
So he was very excited. He says, "Okay, you are looking ahead and looking forward to something which is going to happen, you think?" I said, "Very much. We will have some problem because the number of Bangladeshis who were migrating to India, we couldn't have afford to keep them with us. So in that case, Bangladesh would have been under military occupation of Pakistan, and the genuine Bangladeshis, including both Muslim and Hindus, would have migrated to all the states
Of India. Right.
in and around Bangladesh. Okay, into India, naturally. Having said that, then we also decided that the Mukti Bahini needs to be hardened. So if they face the bullets, if they face the Pakistan army for some time, they will also be trained. They would also leave the main roads and start traveling from the tracks which they know, and the Pakistan army does not, because being the local, they knew all the tracks and all the small bridges crossing the rivers, or where the river was possible to be crossed by boats. So this advantage we wanted the Bangladesh people to bring to us, and along with us Mukti Bahini would be trained. And as you know, we trained the Mukti Bahini during that period, and they were let loose the moment the monsoon was over, and they created havoc
So how did you, sir,
amongst the
assign in taking part in training the Mukti Bahini? I think this entire plan and regimentation of these, I mean, I would say most of them were civilians. This had
Yeah.
to be planned and
yeah. And then, as you are aware,
Mhm.
we set up Mukti Bahini training teams
Okay,
all around
okay,
in West Bengal, south of river Ganges, then in North Bengal, then in Siliguri, then in Tripura, sorry, then in this Shillong,
Shillong, Meghalaya, right?
yeah, Meghalaya. Then we set up in Assam and down to Tripura, Mizoram, all along.
Okay,
Now they were encouraged to come over, and the training camps were set up all along the border, and the Indian Army trained them for about 6 months during that period, March to October. And as you know, the rainy season also got over by then, and we had decided that we would strike sometimes during December. So that was the selection of the and during that period, Mukti Bahini was let loose to go and get information of their strongholds and of their defenses, as also carry out raids and attacks on their line of communication, which really uh, discouraged the Pakistani army, and they had no more will left to remain in Bangladesh. Just before the war itself, their morale had got shattered. And when the regular troops, we had taken about 2 months to after October to congregate and collect in Tripura, Meghalaya, then North Bengal, South in Calcutta zone. The troops which were deployed against the Chinese, they were pulled out because we did not have any other troops to. We only had one division in Ranchi which could have been used,
20
but that would not have been adequate to cover entire Bangladesh.
Right.
So we pulled out certain forces from 33 Corps in Siliguri sector. That was Sikkim and Bhutan sector and North Bengal. Then similarly we pulled out troops from 4 Corps Tejpur sector. Then again from Nagaland and Mizoram, where we had a division worth of troops, much more than we had who were operating for counterinsurgency operations. So they were all pulled out, regrouped. Now, for example, the Tripura brigade was composed of the people from Mizoram, the troops which pulled out from Mizoram. The Nagaland 8 Div was in north of
Zakhama. Zakhama, sir.
Yeah, from Assam,
Achha, achha, achha.
along that river which flows, I forget the name of that river now, east to into Bangladesh.
Surma.
Huh?
Surma river.
Surma. Okay. And then Siliguri Corps came along the Padma River, on both sides of the Padma River, because these obstacles had to be crossed as well. And if the bridges, there were hardly any bridges on these rivers, and if they were destroyed, whatever little bridges were destroyed, we just could not cross over. However, and luckily for us, Indira Gandhi accepted that unfortunately Bangladesh has to bleed for a couple of months. Mukti Bahini has to be trained, and maybe the civilian population has to suffer. So that was the suffering that Bangladesh went through, because we could not pull our troops out against, which were deployed against the Chinese, and also we did not have any reserves to be committed unless and until we withdrew from the Chinese border. So that was the scenario before the 1971 operation started. Now, luckily for us, it worked for our advantage. Firstly, the weather improved, the monsoon got over. Secondly, the Mukti Bahini got trained, And Mukti Bahini, with training, they became more courageous. They could enter deep inside Bangladesh, and that demoralized the Pakistani army. So as and when we went in Bangladesh, they had no will to fight at all. So that is how they succumbed. And I still remember after Dhaka was captured, the junior commissioned officer came. He was supposed to be my guard commander from the Pakistan army. He came and said, "Sir, I want to speak to you very frankly that if we had officers like the ones which we have in the Indian army, we would not have lost the battle. Our army officers were more interested in making money, in taking Bangladeshi goods to Pakistan, making profit on that, and they were not interested basically in fighting against India." So that is the story. Their morale was low, then the weather was against them, and so that is how the surrender took place. And they had no willing, otherwise can you imagine, they had about more than 1 lakh troops surrendering.
I think 93,000, sir.
93,000, yeah. Yeah, 1 lakh, 93,000.
Now another
And along with the paramilitary forces and all, they were total 300 police,
right,
Razakar. There were about 3 lakhs
Razakar.
people who had to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
So that is what we did later on, and very interesting incident happened. I was left behind in Dhaka by the army commander, and he said, "You stay behind representing Eastern Command in Dhaka." And there was one General Sarkar.
BN Sarkar, Jimmy Sarkar.
Yes.
Acha, acha, acha.
He was the civilian governor on behalf of the government of India
Acha,
in Dhaka. So he was the civilian governor and I was representing Eastern Command, and one day a working party from the Pakistani army came to our officers' mess where we were staying in Dhaka, which was one of the Bangladesh strongholds, and they came to clean up the area.
acha.
And when he came and saluted to me, because that is the norm, said what has to be done, and then after cleaning they have a cup of tea and then they break off, go back. So when I offered them a cup of tea, he was very touched, and then he openly told me that, "Sir, our officers were making money, they were not interested in ruling Bangladesh properly, and therefore all this trouble. And if we had officers of Indian Army caliber, we would never have lost Bangladesh. Pakistan would not have lost Bangladesh." That means even the other ranks,
Felt the same.
yes. So that is the general overall situation of Bangladesh as I had seen at that point of time. And when Indian Army struck, the morale of the Pakistan Army was low, and they had no will to fight anymore. And thereafter, as you are aware, that we also had concentrated our air force against them, the navy against them, and the navy did good work in Chittagong and Dhaka and in Bay of Bengal, and they made sure that no support could come from anywhere else, the Indian Navy. And on the other hand, they found the Nagas, the Mizos trickling in from their borders. And on the other side, it was the Bangladeshis themselves, Mukti Bahini, assisted by the Indian Army. So they just did not have the moral courage or heart to stand up and fight. And therefore they surrendered.
Now, sir, another thing, I would like to know a bit about your specific role in the planning and management and of the operations
You see,
and everything, sir.
As I told you, I was in charge of military operations. As those days only a lieutenant colonel was in charge of military operations. Today it is a major general who is in charge.
Right.
However, so I had to not only plan but also get information from the intelligence,
Okay.
military intelligence, to locate them as to where their strongholds are. And if that is the stronghold, and if for our capture of Dhaka, if they interfered, we had to clear them.
Right.
So that was the planning which had to be done in detail.
So you got the intelligence from, I mean, Indian
Yeah.
intelligence got it from Mukti Bahini,
Yeah,
and that's how you got
the
it.
intelligence from Mukti Bahini and also from the civilians who were coming out
Acha, acha, acha. Right, right.
from
right.
Bangladesh, they would tell us where they had strongholds. And then once the Mukti Bahini got trained properly, they went in as civilians into even the defended localities of the Pakistan army as workers,
Right, right.
as
Laborers,
water carriers,
Water carriers.
and came out with information as to where their stronghold is.
Now, sir,
That helped us a lot
another thing,
in
like
planning.
giving weapons and ammunition to the Mukti Bahini, how did
Yes.
that happen when you were in charge? Weapons and ammunition
How
that
did
were
we arm
given-
them?
No, no, no. How did this arming of Mukti Bahini, including the training, happen when you were in charge, sir? If you could talk about that.
No, you see what happened, that the initially large number of refugees came over, and we had established refugee camps. Now we went round the refugee camps, picked up all the youngsters
Acha, acha.
and motivated them. They said, after all, our soldiers can fight, so can you. We will train you. And after training, they became very energetic because they had their national pride in them and also the Bengali pride against the Pakistan Muslims. And at that point of time, religion did not play. It was the language
Language.
which was more important, the customs, the language. And that is why the young people of Mukti Bahini, they were very bold, they moved very deep inside the enemy territories, I mean Bangladesh territories, to get us information. And what we did, our only tactics which was changed overall, we never hit their strongholds.
Acha, acha.
We tried to bypass their strongholds.
Like the
surround
cantonments and
them.
those places.
Yes.
Okay.
And that was based on Mukti Bahini information that such and such road is free. You can move fast. And you can well imagine that when a defended locality or a defenses are not only not attacked but are being surrounded from the back, when their line of communication is cut off, the defense has no value thereafter. The gun areas were attacked by the Mukti Bahini. their supply depots were attacked by Mukti Bahinis, and the Indian army was moving towards the depth areas. So that created a panic in the Bangladesh, in the Pakistan army those days. That they felt that here is the Mukti Bahini come Indian army, which is not attacking our strongholds, but are bypassing us, and they are going to attack us from the rear. Then they realized that they will not be able to last out. They will not be able to face us for any long. And then their morale went down and they surrendered. They all surrendered. They had no will to fight thereafter. They just wanted to save their lives, and they wanted to remain free and away from Bangladesh Mukti Bahini, because they were not so disciplined as the Indian army. Indian army we could not have treated our prisoner of war the way Bangladeshis treated them. So that was the reason why they were very keen to surrender to Indian army rather than surrender to Bangladesh.
And I think Pak Army did a lot of atrocities on the local people. So
Yeah, that is how.
yeah.
That is how. And there was somehow or other that those days they came so close to India, and Bengali as a language was the bond. But somehow or other, after the present day Bangladesh has gone back to the real old
East Pakistan
days back again, and they are no longer, Bangladesh is no longer
a friendly nation.
interested in Bengali culture or literature. They are only interested in money and religion. And another very interesting thing happened after the war. I still remember in the operations room in Calcutta, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, Sam Manekshaw, who was the chief, General Arora, General Jacob, and I was the man with a pointer showing them where is Dhaka and where is on the map. So they were discussing as to what and how things should be done. And suddenly they asked me. So I said the only way to do is send Tagore literature and Tagore songs across and revive the Bengali spirit in Bangladesh.
That's a great statement, sir.
Yeah. And that is the reason how and why Bangladesh revolted against Pakistan. Religion was not any more important factor. It was the culture, it was the background, it was the mother tongue, it was the Bengali as a language, Bengali as a pride, which made the difference. And that ultimately it is Tagore music, Rabindra Sangeet, which was the cutting edge and not the army sword or army gun.
Right.
Because whole of Bangladesh got so motivated with the language.
The national anthem is
Right.
right.
So that is how. So it was very interesting when one sees that the armed forces has a limit. Up to certain extent we can achieve. But beyond that, it is the human civilization, culture, religion, and their way of life which takes over. And that is a much better motivating factor than training with guns or any other training which you can impart. And I still remember the day um, Mujibur Rahman returned from London.
Acha, acha. He came to, I think,
Yes,
Calcutta, then Dhaka.
he came to Dhaka.
Acha, acha,
He
acha.
landed at Dhaka,
Mhm.
and I received him on behalf of the government of India
Acha, acha, acha.
because I was very much posted there.
Mhm.
And I still remember that day. It took him 8 hours from Dhaka airport to his house.
Dhanmondi.
Yes. And people all over, his car and his convoy just couldn't move till late in the night when the people started moving a little bit and he got little more space to move. Then he went home and rested for the night. So what I am getting at is that this type of operations, or for that matter any military operation, should have two-tier philosophy. One is which is bigger than fighting itself, which is higher motivating factor, which either unites or breaks. And second tier is the trained army, the way they undertake their military operations, whether it is with tanks or against defenses, we attack or we bypass, whatever, tactical move, that is not at a strategic level but at a tactical level. At a strategic level, the army should be thinking of winning over the heart of the people, not only the soldiers but of the entire nation, to be successful and to remain there as a permanent friend of the people.
Right.
So that is the overall picture of Bangladesh that I can give to you. And if you have any specific questions,
Yes, sir, I do. Few
Yeah.
questions more. Uh, could you remember anybody or interacting with anybody from both Indian Army and Mukti Bahini side? You have mentioned General Jacob and Sam Manekshaw, but any other big shot army officer that you might have worked with regarding the operations, or anybody from Mukti Bahini or the provisional government side, like people like Prime Minister Tajuddin Ahmed or President Syed Nazrul Islam, those kind of people,
you see,
or anybody from the
Uh,
research and analysis wing, Rameshwar
another big soldier was General Sagat Singh.
Sagat Singh, 4 Corps GOC.
He was a very, such officers the Bangladesh operations had thrown up, and they were the real, I would say, people who would think ahead, not only of military success but also at a national level.
Right.
And luckily for us, General Jacob and General Manekshaw and General Arora, they all had that vision for the country and not only for their formations which they were heading.
Now, sir, I would like to know a bit about your career after 71 till your retirement as Lieutenant General, sir. If you could
Yeah,
give me a brief on
after
that.
71 operations, uh, as you know, uh, after General Arora,
Mhm.
there was General Naveen Rawley, who was our army commander for some time. So once he took over, he told me that I am afraid I am new to this area. You are the oldest officer handling.
अच्छा.
General Jacob has moved out. General Adi Setna, who was Brigadier General Staff, he has moved out. So I have told Army headquarters not to post you anywhere for some time. And in return, you will become a brigadier direct from here itself. So
From major to brigadier.
no, I was a lieutenant colonel.
Lieutenant colonel. Acha, acha, after the war.
I was G1 Ops,
G1
GSO1 operations, and those GSO1 operations, there was no BGS, no brigadier, no major general under in charge of operations. Only grade 1 officer was in charge. So after that, he kept his word, and I went on promotion to command a brigade in Nagaland. And when I took over Nagaland, I was posted to Angami area, which was very hot, red hot
Acha, acha.
at that point of time, and uh, all their Angami Nagas were the backbone of the of the Naga movement. So I was posted to that area. However, I won over the heart and soul of the Naga people by not by stopping to fight. I was fighting all right. They were being killed, but parallelly, I worked for their education, for their religion, including renovating their churches
Acha, acha,
in
acha.
every village, constructing roads up to the village. And after about 1 year of my command, when the army commander came to visit me, he said, "Why have you compromised yourself?"
Okay.
That I hear my intelligence people say that the Nagas will not harm Brigadier Chatterjee.
Mm-hmm.
Now, have you handed over everything to them? I said, no, I have not. You can come with me and see whatever you want to. But along with the bullet, I also gave them bread. I made sure that their children were walking safely from a distance of 8 to 10 kilometers to reach Kohima for schooling. On their way back, I used to provide them vehicles, army vehicle to take them back to their villages. Because after all, they were all Indians and they had to be brought into the main fold of the country. And it clicked. And later on, I was nominated to go to National Defence College. From there, I went and attended the National Defence College, and thereafter my career took a different turn altogether.
Acha, acha.
I was Brigadier General Staff of a strike corps on the Western Theatre, and then to be very frank with you, that helped me Bangladesh operations to mature as a strategic thinker and also as a tactician with a heart and not just for the sake of promotion that you do that thing. And similarly, you will be surprised within about 6 months of my taking over Rajouri division, that is 25 Div, and those days 25 Div was responsible from, if you are aware of the geography, Sundarbani, Naushera, then Rajouri,
Punch.
then Punch Valley. So all that area was under me. And later on, we brought both. Law and order was prevailing, and people were very happy. And during my period, right from my immediate boss, who was a corps commander, and then army commander, the chief, the president of India, the vice president of India, everybody visited Rajouri
Acha.
because it was a peaceful area, and that helped me a lot also in maturing much earlier than other divisional commanders who were only meant or who were only looking after the military aspect of life. I also combined the humane aspect of the life. And another very interesting incident at that point of time, Mrs. Gandhi was the Prime Minister. She, one day, I got a message that she wants to visit Rajouri before the election because it was, she wanted certain votes from that area. So she visited. When she came, it was raining, and she had the first appointment was with the, she was addressing the troops. After address of the troops, then the civilian party men would come and visit her, and after that she will have a quiet lunch and take off back to Jammu by a helicopter. Right. Now, when she landed, it started raining, and the helicopter said that we will come back after refueling. So they went back to Jammu, the chopper, and it started raining. She got wet, but she addressed the troops. He says, if they can be wet, so can I be. That way she was a spirited lady. And after that I took her to the our guest room, and I said that luckily your secretary is carrying a change for you. Otherwise I had quickly arranged for a change also. Because we had few ladies, and I told them that wherever if you have a new sari, you bring it. And whatever you have, you provide to give it to her. She can't keep on sitting with a wet sari.
Right.
But luckily, her secretary was carrying a change. So she changed, and then she had a cup of tea, and she recovered after about half an hour. She called me, and while we were discussing in the guest room, she said, how often do you speak to your family which is in Delhi? I said, I speak to them once in 2 months when I go to Jammu to my corps headquarters, because there is no direct connection from Rajouri to Delhi or Rajouri to any part of the country. So immediately she made a note of it. And will you be surprised that within a month the towers were set up, and the first call which I get is from the Prime Minister of India to me. That, General, now you can speak to your family members once in a week. The tower has been set up and I am told, so that is how I am speaking to you from Delhi. You know, that way she was very spirited.
Right.
And when she went back to Delhi, she made sure that she rang up my family, my wife, and presented her with a sari.
Nice.
So that way she was very humane as well. So those were the days that we spent together, and after that, during my tenure in Rajouri, I also accompanied the chief to a trip to Burma, then after Burma to Indochina, Singapore, and came back. And then later on, I accompanied General Sundarji to Europe, Russia, because we were buying T-54 tanks. If you remember, Russian tanks
T-54
was predominant in the Indian army. T-54 and T-55 tanks.
This was,
Those days we did not have Vijayant.
this was before 71, I would say.
Yeah, no,
T-54s with
post 71.
such a post. Okay.
Yeah, this was 76, 77. And that was the time that we tried them out. T-55 and T-54 tanks, which were our battle tanks for about 20 years,
Right, right.
from 80 to 2000. They were our main battle tanks, which we acquired from Russia. Now and thereafter we started building our own Vijayants, and now of course we don't have to import anymore any tanks. We are self-sufficient within the country.
Right.
So those were the days that we had. I spent, as I said, then I came to Delhi as military secretary, dealing with the careers of the officers, and from there I went to Jodhpur to raise the present 12 Corps.
Okay, so you raised the 12 Corps.
Yeah, I raised 12 Corps in Jodhpur, and from there I moved on to Southern Command and Sri Lanka operation,
Acha, acha.
because it was very much happening thing those days. And frankly speaking, the Air Force was very kind. They used to give me aircraft. So I had to go to attend political meetings at Delhi, administrative meeting at Pune and Madras, tactical meeting at Jaffna,
Acha, acha.
diplomatic meeting at Colombo.
Okay.
So
Jaffna
it
was
was
always a hot zone. That
yeah, so very wide range of things I had to deal with, because we were occupying northern Sri Lanka, the Tamil speaking area. So the development of that was our responsibility. The harbors were being maintained, they were being reconstructed, airports were being repaired, they had to be, tarmac had to be put again, their surface had to be improved, then hospitals had to be built, water supply had to be provided. So it was a mixture of both civil and military government. So having done that in Tamil Nadu, then we moved on to the rest of Sri Lanka also. That was another big experience that I had just before I retired. And last icing on the cake was the Maldives operation. We had to clear Maldives. As you remember, we had one day operation to clear Maldives also.
Right.
And that was also under Southern Command. And we moved to Trivandrum. And from Trivandrum, we carried out that operation to clear Maldives of the so-called rebels who wanted to establish their stronghold, which was nothing but an Islamic movement
Right.
to strengthen their hold on that island. So that is why they had thrown out their president, and the president was taken by helicopter by us, brought into India, and after the whole thing was controlled, then he went back, and That was Maldives operation we did, and after Maldives, mm, I had by that time achieved my date of retirement, and thereafter I settled down in a place called Auroville,
Auroville.
yeah, next to Pondicherry.
Right.
And ever since I retired, I settled there, and I started teaching in their schools, and now presently I am director of Sri Aurobindo International Institute of Educational Research, and I still continue looking after their education of not only Aurovillians but the neighboring villages also.
So another thing.
So that
sir.
is how I am keeping myself occupied. Okay, then, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for speaking.
God
upon
bless
this
you.
matter.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
bye bye. God
Bye.
bless you.
Bye.
Thank you.